Well, let's get you more on that, the developments taking place in Bangladesh, because again, the stir and the protest that has been reported as protesters vandalized the offices of the country's biggest newspaper, the Daily Pratham, and the Daily Star amid widespread outrage over the death of a youth leader, Sharif Osman Hadi. Now, the massive protests that erupted in Dhaka and in other regions as well after the death of the youth leader, with the demonstrators even torching Awami League office and several newspaper offices and clashing with the authorities, deepening fears of further deterioration in law and order. Protesters also set fire to Sheikh Mujib's residence and an Awami League office in Rajshahi as violent protests outside the Indian Assistant High Commission in Chittagong, Bangladesh, also that has been reported. As far as hundreds of students and people gathered at the capital Shahbag intersection near the Dhaka University as well, following the death of the youth leader. As far as these developments are concerned, this is a concern that India is also watching very closely as far as when it comes to the Indian Visa Application Center that has also been closed on grounds of security concerns amid protest marches towards the facilities that were stopped by the security officials. What is now being said as far as when it comes to these developments are concerned? Srinjoy, once again, Bangladesh is on the boil, this time over the death of a youth leader. However, when it comes to pointing fingers and pointing the blame, India's name is now being dragged in their internal politics.
Very wrongly too, because India has nothing to do with all this. Now, there have been people marching outside the Indian High Commission in Dhaka. There are reports about the Indian Deputy High Commission being attacked in Chattogram, in Chittagong. Now, this is not fair at all. And two things are really expected. One, the Bangladesh authorities have to ensure adequate precautions and help to the Indian High Commission and Indian citizens in Bangladesh, anywhere in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, in Chittagong, any other place. How can the Indian missions be attacked in any part of the country? Surely the law and order has to be ensured. Surely security of these establishments have to be secured. Look at any other country. Look at India. If there are protests against any mission in India, the protests happen, but they are outside the mission and a distance away from the mission. That is what the laws are about. Now, this has to happen in Dhaka. Now, we are hearing that the army was also called in, which suggests that the situation is getting worse and worse. But if there have been attacks on the Indian Deputy High Commission in Chittagong, then it's a worrying situation. Now, what can India do right now? Naturally, India can appeal to the Bangladeshi authorities to ensure there is protection. That's the first thing. Then other measures may need to be taken in the future. Those are possible measures like bringing back a number of diplomats, bringing back some family members of diplomats. All of that can happen later. First of all, for the next 2 or 3 days, there has to be adequate protection. Let's not forget that in August last year, Pranay Verma and other diplomats had to go to the cantonment because of protests in Dhaka. Now, this cannot go on all the time.
But is the administration really in control, Srinjoy? Because in an interim administration there, but who is exactly fueling the fire against India in Bangladesh?
That's something the Bangladesh government has to tell the Indian side. First of all, there is no elected government in Bangladesh. There hasn't been one for about 15 months or so. Now, elections are due in February. Now, elections, can they happen if things are as bad as they are? That's the next question that comes up. First, of course, security for Indian missions and all Indian citizens, whether they are diplomats, whether they are Indian citizens. Secondly, and this is really Bangladesh's concern, can you have elections if the situation is getting from bad to worse?
Well, it seems as far as the situation is concerned, it is getting volatile as Bangladesh is on the boil again, and who are on their target as far as when it comes to the former ruling Awami League offices, even when it comes to media outlets, and even when it comes to the Indian High Commission and the Assistant High Commission. We are looking at these developments where anti-India protest marches that are also taking place right in the middle of Dhaka. As these protests continue, as Shinjoy continues to be with us, we also talk about the protest that has now escalated to Sheikh Mujibur's house as well, because now that the army has been called in amid the unrest, a situation that seems to intensify in Bangladesh, in other regions as well, outside Dhaka as well. And this is now stemming from the death of the youth leader. As protesters have been storming the streets in Dhaka, media outlets and the leaders' houses that are being targeted. This is now coming at a time where the house of the former and the founder, rather, of Bangladesh, his house that was set ablaze. And this is again when it comes to the student so-called uprising that had been reported last year. And once again, on the boil that we're looking at former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's house in Dhanmondi 32 as well. What we are looking at as far as when it comes to these attackers, laid siege to several residences as well. So, Shinjoy, instead of peace calls, it seems that all of these developments that are taking place under the watch of Muhammad Yunus. Now, as far as when it comes to showing solidarity with the death of that youth leader, it seems that the anti-India sentiment is also being fueled simultaneously.
Yes, and India has nothing to do with this. If there is a death of a youth leader, it's very, very unfortunate. Why is India being dragged in? Why is India being troubled? India has a high commission. Hundreds of Bangladeshis get visas to India every week. If there is a medical problem, immediately India issues a visa for Bangladeshi citizens. If there are other issues, India issues visas. India has had to close down its visa center in Dhaka. Now, who does it hurt? It hurts the people of Bangladesh who are unwell and who want to be treated in India. It's as simple as that. Now, this is self-defeating. These attacks on Indian missions and on Indian citizens can be very self-defeating. That's one. In any case, they should not happen. And the Bangladeshi government, whether elected, whether unelected, that's a different matter. They should ensure security for Indian diplomats and other Indian citizens. Let's not forget, and I've said this before, when there was that very critical situation in August last year, Pranay Verma, the Indian High Commissioner, and others had to move to the Kent. Does that have to happen again and again, once every year? This is something that will look very bad for the Bangladesh government.
All right. Speaking of Muhammad Yunus, we will want to put out exactly when it comes to his statement as well, because Bangladesh unrest that has been reported once again with the anti-India sentiment that has been fueled. Little is being done when it comes to the interim government over there. This is what the chief advisor of the government of Bangladesh has to say as far as over the recent incident of what they have been calling as an assassination of a youth leader, Osman Hadi. So I stand before you with deeply heart-wrenching news. Sharif Osman Hadi, the fearless frontline warrior of the July mass uprising under treatment in Singapore and spokesperson for the Inqilab Manch, is no longer with us. In the meantime, they have also announced when it comes to mourning and the flags to fly at half-mast now. As far as these developments that have been taking place over the July uprising, this was the youth leader who was part of the July uprising that happened last year with when it comes to the exile of the then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. However, when it comes to the assassination attempt that had taken place and he was said to be in a critical condition, he was airlifted then to Singapore for further treatment. However, he succumbed to injuries over there, and with the death of the youth leader, this seems to have triggered these mass protests across Bangladesh, not just in Dhaka, but in other regions of Bangladesh as well, where the anti-India sentiment, as Shinjoy rightly pointed out, India having nothing to do when it comes to the internal developments in Bangladesh, seems to be blamed for this another uprising. Shinjoy, thank you very much for joining in with those developments.